Talk a little bit about our way forward. I know Amir touched a lot on the history. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can then understand who we are, understand what's happening, and how to move forward as a community with courage and resilience, inshallah. So first, we have to answer these three essential questions. Where have we been? Our history, right? Where are we now? So what is this crisis actually looking like? And where are we then going? So where have we been? So I'm just going to briefly touch on some of our achievements as a society, some of our advancements as a society, and kind of talk a little bit about the history of where we have been. So as many of you know, Hararis are a very sort of ancient civilization for centuries and centuries. Hararis, the earliest recorded history is actually in the 9th century. And in the 16th century, Hararis basically expanded to most of Ethiopia and reigned over most of Ethiopia. And this was a time of huge advancements in terms of scientific advancements, as well as a lot of the cultural flourishing of our community happened at this time. And this continued for a very long time. In fact, Harar was dubbed the Timbuktu of the East. If anyone knows a little bit of like Islamic history of Timbuktu, is considered an epicenter of religious, spiritual knowledge. And so Harar was very much like this. We're rife with many scholars and dignitaries. It was a center of traditional Islamic study. And you still see remnants of that in our communities as well. So we had a very advanced economic system with many trades that was done through Harar. We were at a very advantageous geographical location, but also had a very good handle on the sciences that allowed us to advance in this way, including arithmetic, including a very deep and thorough understanding of governance and law. And all of this, what's really beautiful about all of this is this was very deeply rooted and grounded in our Islamic history and traditions, in the actual jurisprudence and law and Islamic society. So there was a very, very rich and beautiful history of community life in Harar that I think is really important to remember and to acknowledge. So I'm actually part of an organization. We were very active a couple of years ago, slowed down a little bit now, but inshallah we'll be active soon again. The organization is called the Harari Nature and Heritage Conservancy. And this was actually a picture taken from one of the members of our conservancy, who's an archaeologist. And his name is Muftah Abu Bakr. He's a Harari archaeologist. So this was discovered in 2014, so fairly recently, from an archaeological dig. It's actually an old Harari home. And it dates back to I believe the early 9th or 10th century. And so as you can see from the structure, for those of you who know a little bit about history, it has almost like a medieval castle structure, which was highly advanced for architecture at that time. So this is just an example of kind of, how advanced the society was. These are also some recent archaeological finds. The first picture at the top there is a currencies, they're coins, that Hararis used to use to trade. So we had many exports, including cotton, some metal ores, a lot of kind of livestock and food stuff. And so these coins were used as an early form of currency, and they were used before many societies even had physical currency. Many people were just bartering and doing service exchange. We did a little bit of that too, but we also had our own currency, which is really amazing. And the very bottom picture there, can anyone guess what that is? I don't know if anyone can read the writing. Anyone want to guess? No? Say again? It's actually a chessboard or a game. So This is one of the oldest games ever recorded in African history, and it was found in Harar. Okay, so now that you know our history, the significance and the importance of remembering our history is remembering who we are and where we came from, because I want you to acknowledge and understand and really remember that we have such a beautiful legacy and a culture that's really worth preserving and honoring. So please, like, if there's anything you take away from the historical aspect of my talk, I want you to remember that. So our current crisis, I won't go into too much about this because Amir really elaborated on that well, but there's a few different issues here. One of the most pressing things is the violence. The physical violence, which many of you have seen those really disturbing videos and images. The psychological and emotional terror. Now this is something that has, implications for generations, can have implications for generations. The emotional trauma that people are undergoing, as well as the displacement and the deprivation. So people are being displaced from their homes, land is being confiscated, their water supply is cut off, the sanitation issues, which you saw the videos of, which is it's a huge public health concern. The disruption of waste disposal can cause, eruption of diseases and epidemics. So it's really, really important to kind of note that as well. And as well as the environmental destruction of our ecosystem, which can affect the future of, Hararis and people in the region being able to grow the crops. So all of these are actually categorized as an occupation in a way. So it's an occupation and something that we really need to be taking very seriously. So some of the concerns here is the safety and security and well-being, the community and cultural preservation, community support and development. So right now, there's really not a whole lot being done, or not enough being done on the front lines to support and develop. So we need to mobilize. We need to mobilize as a community to be able to provide the support that's necessary. As you know, the government has been silent on this issue. There's a lot of complacency from the government. It's the government's responsibility, actually, to protect people and to protect their livelihood and to put an end to occupations and injustices like this. But we see time and time again that this is not the case, and so we need to mobilize to affect change, to speak to the governments, but also to put the power in the people, because at the end of the day, it's really us that's going to make the change. So where then are we going? How do we put the power back in the people? How are we able then to mobilize and to organize ourselves so that we can move forward and do what we can to end the crisis? So community development has to be a part of the picture. Of course, what's happening is urgent, and it needs urgent responses. We need relief efforts. We need, people who have money to provide money to be able to buy resources. But we also need to see what each of us has the capacity to do. So the solution here, long-term as well as short-term, is capacity building. What are our strengths? We have multiple strengths within each and every one of us. And can you imagine that if all of our strengths were expressed to the fullest capacity, and we then collectively expressed those strengths together, how powerful we would be to mobilize? We would be extremely powerful to mobilize. So we need to first recognize our strengths. We need to reflect on our strengths and what capacities we have, whether that's, a skill that you have. Maybe you're a researcher and you can do some research on how to kind of properly address these issues. Or perhaps, you were blessed with lots of wealth and can actually put money into infrastructure. Whatever the strength is, it doesn't have to be something that you do as a living or for a living. If you have a connection or a resource, actually gathering those resources and gathering ourselves as a community and understanding where our strengths are is really a really important place to start. So I call this strength-based community organizing. Okay, so and the tool, this is sort of like a social work sociological tool, but it's called community asset mapping. Has anyone heard of this before? Yeah, so a few people. So community asset mapping. Community asset mapping is taking an inventory of our strengths as a community, so your individual strengths and resources, and how they can be expressed as a collective. So it's to establish strong community values and work towards a common goal in a sustainable way. So working towards a goal in a way that will carry forward, not just in terms of relief efforts, but to really have this be a wake-up call to organize ourselves as a community, to unite, and as Najib said earlier, to kind of put away our petty, drama or issues or whatever it is, to be able to unite and come together as a community for our people. These are just different approaches. Inshallah, I actually really want to teach a workshop on this. This is a strength that I have in community organizing. I work in the social services. I'm also a writer. So I would love to actually teach this. And I think this is what we need. I think we each need to, if there's something that you can teach the community to be able to help us in this situation, to be able to organize better, to be able to gather resources better, then you should really be, offering that support if you're able to. And so I want to offer my support to teach some of these tools so we can gather our strengths, we can create a database of Hararis and their strengths and their resources. So who would be interested in that? Okay. Amazing. So I'm going to make the intention, inshallah, to have that happen soon. So I would like us to now just kind of reflect a little bit on, what we can do, what we each can do to contribute to our community. So everyone here is valuable in what they can do. Everyone here has a strength, whether you're a good listener or whatever it is. If you're someone who can boost people's morale at a time when many of us are feeling very devastated, right? If that's your skill, that's a valuable skill. Whatever it is you have, whatever skill or tool you have, I would really deeply implore you to think about that in the coming days and really just reflect on what you can do to contribute to the collective. And that will help us understand what creative solutions exist in our collective capacity. So I want to leave us, I know many of us are feeling very devastated and saddened, myself included, with the conditions in Harar. And so I want us to, if we can for a minute, really just think about resisting and organizing and all of these things. They're very necessary, but also at the end of the day, we have to understand that our nothing is possible without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we need to kind of rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's provisions and have that patience that we need, the patience. And though it's of course understandable that we're saddened and devastated at a time like this, we need not despair. So it's one thing to be sad, but please do not despair. Don't lose hope. You've seen where we've been. You know that we're able to organize and be strong as a community. And just like we had that in the past, we can have that again. I leave just with this ayah from the Quran, so the translation. And if Allah should touch you with adversity, there's no remover of it except Him, and if He intends for you good, then there's no repeller of His bounty. He causes it to reach whom He wills of His servants, and He is the forgiving, the merciful. So please just reflect on that may Allah alleviate the plight of Hararis and everyone who is affected by the crisis that's happening today. Say Ameen. Ameen. May Allah give us the patience, the resilience, the courage to organize and move forward in a meaningful way towards peace and justice for our people. Ameen. May Allah allow us to continue to not despair and to have hope in His mercy and in His benevolence to be able to provide peace in Harar. And may you all, through these difficult times, find some sabr and be able to persevere through these difficult times. Al-Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawm al-Din.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Thank you.